Every year, China imports about 66,000 metric tons of these. That's the weight of about 6.5 Parisian landmarks, or if you like, 440 blue whales. And most of these avocados come all the way from Peru. This journey used to take over a month. Now it's a straight shot, cutting it by 10 days. Why? One word, megaport. And it's paid for by China.
Chinese President Xi Jinping begins a week-long South America tour, opening a China-funded mega port in Peru.
This is a huge investment, not only for Peru, but in Latin America, and it is expected to triple agricultural exports of Peru.
Over the last 20 years, China has built up a network of about 100 ports on every continent except Antarctica, clustered around key maritime choke points, which are crucial to global trade.
This gives China a strategic advantage as global trade tensions rise. But it's also sparking concerns.
Even though these ports, by and large, are commercial ports, some of them do actually have the capacity to host naval vessels.
So why did China build a global ports empire? And should Washington be worried about it? Without ports, the global economy pretty much grinds to a halt.
Roughly about 80% of global trade is conducted via ships, and ports are crucial to that.
6 of the 10 busiest ports in the world are located in China, and 95% of the nation's trade is done by sea.
China has made itself rich by being able to find markets overseas for its manufactured goods and being able to ship raw materials to China to be processed. So making sure that it has access to a network of global ports is a key part of that.
And it's not only ports. China is also the world's biggest maker of container ships. Making these generational investments to dominate global trade infrastructure is a central pillar of the Belt and Road Initiative.
Over the years, it has become President Xi Jinping's signature global initiative with the goal to strengthen or improve global connectivity through building up infrastructure projects.
This has meant modernizing the ancient Silk Road with highways and rail while securing maritime pathways in and out of China.
Since the launch of the Belt and Road Initiative, Chinese entities' investment in overseas ports have accelerated, both in terms of scale and numbers.
This map shows Chinese entities have invested in 129 port projects, totaling over $60 billion from Tanzania and Australia to Nigeria and Cambodia. This dwarfs investments made by any other country.
There is no U.S. government initiative that tries to finance or build port projects overseas.
China has an entire ecosystem of companies, from cement firms, iron, steel firms that specialize in building out ports. Those are not industries where the US has been focused in recent years.
But the level of Chinese ownership over its ports varies.
China's global port network is made up of a series of different forms of ownership by Chinese state-run companies and also Chinese private companies.
In most cases, they team up with multinational or local companies to build and run the ports, even though the land is still owned by local governments. 17 of the ports China has invested in have majority Chinese ownership, which could offer Beijing more leverage at those sites,
such as prioritizing container ships from a certain country or denying the docking of ships from other countries.
But China has little reason to disrupt global trade, which takes us back to the first megaport we mentioned, at Chancay in Peru. 60% is owned by China's state-run shipping company COSCO, and 40% by an entity controlled by an Argentine investor.
Chancay is located around 40 miles north of Lima, and in its final phase, the main area of the port is expected to be around 700 acres, which is about 80% the size of Central Park. So the port itself is huge. This port is part of China's large infrastructure push in Latin America. Currently, 3 out of 4 of the biggest economies of South America trade more with China than the US.
In fact, a third of all the containers exported by Peru are sent to China, carrying not only these favorites, but other agricultural products and minerals as well. So this makes Peru a crucial gateway into China for Brazil, Chile, and other countries.
The initial investment was of $1.3 billion, but if there is more demand, COSCO has said that it could invest $3.5 billion total for an expansion of the port.
Chancai is a deep water port, which means that shipments could take place directly from Chancai to major Chinese ports. So that would enable journeys to be cut down, costs to be reduced, trade to be increased between South America and China.
US officials have criticized this port, telling Peruvian authorities that they should not have allowed a Chinese firm to create such a big investment in the region. But Peruvian officials have countered, saying that the US hasn't been willing to make such a big investment in Peru.
As we know by now, this is not just a story about overseas investment, it's also about national security.
A number of Trump officials have even suggested that the port could be dual use, meaning that at some stage it could be used not just for economic activity, but for military activity too. That's something that Peruvian officials strongly deny, and that China denies too.
But these concerns are not unfounded.
Well, U.S. intelligence says China's first overseas military base in the tiny African country of Djibouti is likely to be followed by several more.
In Djibouti, what began as a commercial port eventually turned into China's first full-fledged overseas military base.
Remember this map? Of the 17 ports with Chinese majority ownership, 14 have potential for both commercial and military use.
Meaning it can service commercial ships, LNG tankers, oil tankers, and it might also have the physical capacity to host fueling ships, logistic ships for military purposes, or a military battleship.
China only has one overseas naval base so far, as compared to the several that the US has dotted around the world.
In fact, the US also has a naval base in Djibouti, along with at least 127 other overseas military bases. Chinese officials strongly deny that the ports are for military use, but still,
many countries around the world are concerned that these Chinese port operators could in turn become listening posts to what the economies that are surrounding these ports are doing.
But the more immediate concern is that China could leverage these ports in a trade war.
China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China, we gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back.
For the US, the Panama Canal is really a crucial economic lifeline. Something like 5% of global trade travels through the canal, and 40% of US container traffic flows through it. Without that ability to easily pass between the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean through that corridor, US trade would be very much impacted.
2 of the ports on either side of the canal are owned by Hong Kong-based conglomerate CK Hutchison.
To all intents and purposes, Beijing doesn't have direct control over Hutchinson. But the very fact that the key executives at these companies may have direct relationship with the Chinese Communist Party, that really makes a lot of Western governments uncomfortable.
A foreign power today possesses, through their companies, which we know are not independent, the ability to turn the canal into a choke point, and that is a direct threat to the national interest and security of the United States.
China has said that it has always respected Panama's sovereignty over the canal and that it firmly opposes economic coercion and bullying practices. Yet, it has also pushed back against a deal that would give control of CK Hutchinson's Panama ports to American asset manager BlackRock, calling the deal a betrayal of national interests.
The European Union has introduced investment screening regulations, which make it much more difficult for China to buy up critical infrastructure, including ports, across the continent.
A tit-for-tat over docking fees has also been rippling through the shipping industry. Washington has also suggested that all this Chinese money comes with heavy strings attached.
But if you talk to officials in Nigeria, Peru, beyond, there's a feeling that, look, we need this infrastructure, it's important for our economic modernization plans, and China's the only game in town offering it.
Ultimately, we're going to see a reshaping of global trade flows because maritime trade has become more and more political